and I'm the commissioner for the Department of the Aging. I am really happy to be here today, and as you know, today's really, really hot outside, and this is being opened as a cooling center, and we're waiting for Mayor Bloomberg to come in.
So. We need a kitchen, and what is it he can do to help us? Because they're saying we don't have the right equipment. So send somebody in and check our kitchen out, and then they could tell us what's wrong, and then it can be done. They could renovate our kitchen. We need a kitchen very badly.
The only barrier to installing a kitchen is always cost. It's a problem, but we can try to work and see what we can do about it. You know that there's a fiscal crisis right now, so it's more problematic. When I get back to the office, let me look at it, and there may be ways of trying to do that.
So you will speak to the mayor about this?
Yes, I will certainly speak to not only the mayor, I'll speak to my own staff and see if we can reprioritize some things.
I thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Played a game called Red Dog. You bet against the pot, in and out.
My height.
Exactly.
Yeah, I thought he was a big guy.
I-26.
Should have called earlier.
I was out here. Everybody criticizes the mayor.
Sure. And you're going to raise your taxes to pay for it, right?
Hi guys. Absolutely, but you got to be in the picture. Are you guys brothers?
Get that one. I'll get this one.
Hang on.
No.
One.
There we go.
Ready? 1, 2, 3. Cheese.
Cheese.
I'm the commissioner.
Oh, you are the commissioner?
I will take care of it.
You would?
I'll speak to Ms. Mason.
400 cooling centers open. Call 311. And it's a good time to stop in on a neighbor, particularly somebody that's all living by themselves, and say, you know, just want to make sure you're cool enough, and you could go to a mall, you could go to movies, you could go to a cooling center. dehydrated, you can go down pretty fast. So you can also go to the beaches. Do not swim if there is not a lifeguard. Just nothing's worth dying for. No swim is worth that. And to be very careful. We have lots of beaches, but just make sure that there's a lifeguard on duty.
Thank you, guys.
Of the heat, make sure they're well hydrated. They can find a cooling center or a place that's cool. They should take advantage of that. If they're working outside, they should be very careful, take breaks, and again, hydrate all the time. The mayor has indicated pretty clearly, look at our neighbors and listen to the power companies when there are appeals to conserve. And lastly, sign up for Notify NYC. You get all the notifications you need in the city. Go call 311 or go on nyc.gov.
Commissioner Farley, as a doctor, what do you recommend that people do?
Let him answer that. I'll tell you.
My question,
So most people do okay in the heat, but the people who are particularly vulnerable in the heat would be the elderly, people with chronic medical conditions like heart disease and lung disease, people taking multiple medications, people who may be confused, who have mental illness or developmental delay. These are the people, if they're your relatives, your friends, your neighbors, you should check up on them and make sure that they're in an air-conditioned setting.
Have you guys had any incidents today? Any health-related?
We don't have any data on heat-related illness now. The heat wave is just starting, and so we want to get the word out to prevent that sort of problem.
Commissioner Bruno, there's a cut to caseworkers. Are you concerned about that? The people who do check on the elderly? In the budget, there's a proposal for a cut to caseworkers.
I don't know the details of that. I can just say we want to get the message out to everybody to check up on people who are particularly vulnerable so that they can be in cool settings. And as Commissioner Bruno just said, we have close to 400 cooling centers available throughout the city, as well as what people can do for their neighbors.
And 2 over 90 days in a row are pretty tough for older people.
It maybe catch people by surprise because it's early in the season to have these days of this heat, so people may not be aware of it. So we're just recommending people be aware for those people who are particularly vulnerable, who I just said.
Doctor, what are the ordinary precautions people ought to take in weather like this?
And for most people, it's going to be okay. Most people know to stay in the cool settings and not to be exercising in a strenuous way in the heat. But you can still get outside in the heat and you can exercise. But if you're going to exercise vigorously, it should be in the early morning or in the evening. In the middle of the day, you should be walking, stay in the shade, and drinking plenty of water.
Commissioner Bruno, what are your thoughts on that? The cuts to caseworkers who do visit
You're
the
asking the
elderly
wrong commissioner.
and check on them.
It's really not an area that I can comment on. I don't really know the agencies. But look, this center is I think a good example of what is very good. We've opened up 400 centers in the city today for people to come to. That's a great distribution. By the way, it's almost 90 plus in Manhattan and Brooklyn. It's over 100 in Queens. It's over 70 in the Bronx and another almost 25 in Staten Island. We want people to take advantage of those opportunities and obviously follow what the health commissioner just said on good health practices.
What about the food safety? Is any of that, the contaminated food which has been around in Europe, has that found its way into the chain here?
People should follow just the regular food safety practices that we recommend for restaurants, for people at home. The heat really shouldn't affect that.
Can we back up and talk about the heat one more time? Can you tell us about the symptoms of heat stroke and the other, the various degrees of what happens?
If people are having heat-related illness that's becoming severe, they tend to be confused. They tend to not be sweating at times when they should be sweating and get weakness. If people have symptoms like that either themselves or if you recognize that in someone else, get in touch with medical authorities.
And there are various stages, right? Heat stroke, what are the various stages, doctor?
Heat-related illness is probably just the best way to describe that. And again, what's important is for people to recognize that most people will do fine, but the people who are particularly vulnerable are the elderly and people with chronic medical conditions such as heart disease and lung disease, people taking multiple medications that may actually prevent them from sweating and being able to release some of the heat. It should be clear to most people, just check up on people who you know who have those sort of conditions.
In a situation like this, if someone goes to the doctor for something not related necessarily to heat and is given a prescription, does it make sense to talk to the pharmacist? Hey, we're facing a heat wave. Is something like this going to impact me? Do I need to be careful about being in the heat, being in the sun? Is that even worth asking about?
People should always know what medicines they're taking, what the potential side effects are of those medicines. There's nothing special really that should be happening around those medicines now, except for people with those sort of chronic medical conditions. And if people have questions, they can talk to the pharmacist or the doctor.
And again, the top 2 or 3 things to keep in mind is people are trying to beat the heat.
Stay in a cool setting, particularly if you're vulnerable. If you're elderly, heart disease, lung disease, taking multiple medications, people with developmental delay, people with Alzheimer's disease who may be confused and not turning on the air conditioner, those are the people who are vulnerable. And the very young, infants under the age of 1.
The other thing I add is hydrating is very important. Hydrating at all times.
Yes.
What would you recommend is good food to eat in the summer as opposed to winter?
Salads.
Change your diet.
I saw a lot of street vendors selling watermelon today. Is that a legitimate way to get water into your body? On a hot day?
Yes, any kind of liquid should be fine. We certainly recommend water is absolutely fine. Watermelon's fine too.
Tasty also.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Or stay away from alcohol and caffeine. Now, you have to do a strenuous activity by doing it during the coolest part of the day. 24 pound hot glycerin. Used to
Wild reporters that we have to deal with. Good, so you'll see it on TV.
Okay.